Last week, Amazon Game Studios announced that they're once again developing a Lord of the Rings MMO after shelving the previous attempt in 2021. This project is one that caught my eye enough to do a full everything known breakdown, and as normal I have an accompanying webpage with all my sources listed. Now this one is fairly easy because not much is known, but I was able to find a bit more information that you might not see anywhere else. And as always, the goal is to get you the most comprehensive and accurate source of information for this MMO in the shortest amount of time possible. So with that in mind, let's get into the confirmed information first. AGS has partnered with Embracer Group, which owns Middle-earth Enterprises, which owns the Lord of the Rings IP. The timeline follows the stories of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings, which is the years 2941 to 3019 in the timeline. They have said that the story of this project might not be 100% true to the original story in order to have a better gameplay experience. The game is being developed for both PC and console by Amazon Game Studios Orange County, and the director for that studio is Rich Lawrence, who has been with Amazon since 2017 and previously spent 15 years as the CTO of Sony Online Entertainment. They're using an upgraded version of Azoth engine, which is the same engine that New World uses, but they're planning to evolve it considerably to deliver something that feels distinct from New World. The project is a full reboot and is not using any assets or design from the previous project that was shut down in 2021. And the CEO of AGS, Christoph Hartmann, has said that their goal with the MMO is to aim very big. In fact, their goal is to make this the biggest MMO out there. In addition, he has said that he wants this MMO to appeal to non-MMO players as well. And anytime I hear things like, we want this to be the biggest MMO, I assume that means they want to make the game have mass appeal, which to me means it might borrow heavily from other MMOs historically that had mass appeal like WoW or Final Fantasy. Hartmann also mentioned that they want to have a lot of instant rewards in this MMO, and here's how he describes that. He says, everything is about instant reward, and since social media and internet and so on, that instant reward thing is so important. It has to be faster and faster. If you just rely on people figuring out the mechanics very fast because it's very similar to what they had before, that's great. But it's all about accessibility and very early having rewards so they feel progress, and then slowly letting them get better and better, and basically giving them an option that they can start at a different pace and not getting frustrated, and that's what's important. Hartmann is also aware that they need to have a lot more content at launch than what New World had, and here's his comments on that as well. People just literally burned through content at an incredible speed. We could not keep up with developing new content. At the beginning we said we obviously need post-launch content. We looked at the time frame in our world where we have a lot of experienced people saying 2 or 3 months, but people burned through what we expected them to take 2 or 3 months in just 1 month. And that's all I have for confirmed information. Now let's talk about the speculative information. I speculate that this MMO is in pre-production, as the Amazon Games announcement said they were in the early stages of production, which is kind of an open-ended statement. And in the Games Industry Biz interview, they mentioned the project was in prototyping stage, which suggests to me that it is in pre-production. Further, I have a list of confirmed and speculative AGS Lord of the Rings MMO devs on my website, and the majority of them started between March and June of 2022, and most of them have roles like narrative designer, product lead, art producer, and game designer. I have not found any employees or job listings that shows them hiring developers yet, so I'm definitely thinking they're still in the design phase. Talking about job listings, sometimes with these early projects, job listings are a way to get more detail on an upcoming project. In this case, I have not been able to find any past or present job listings for this project, so that eliminates one potential avenue to get new information. But if you guys do find any, do let me know. And I also want to talk about one of the biggest advantages this MMO has, and that is the IP. I've talked several times in the past about this, but I do think building an MMO on an established IP is so much easier than it is to build an MMO on a brand new IP. The reasons for that are many. The obvious being you don't have to spend nearly as much time on narrative and story development. But even bigger than that, especially on an IP as massive as Lord of the Rings, you get a huge influx of fans of that IP, even those that are not normally MMO players. It is much harder to sell an MMO on a brand new IP than it is to sell one on an existing IP. However, there are often very expensive licensing fees when developing on an established IP, so that is oftentimes why you see independent studios opt for going the new IP route. But if you look at the success and failures in the MMO space, for instance, look at products like Rift and WildStar and compare that to Star Wars: The Old Republic, Elder Scrolls Online, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy XIV. Time after time, existing IPs tend to do much better in the MMO space than do brand new IPs. Next, I do want to interject some of my own thoughts regarding the two biggest worries brought up by myself and many other members of the community regarding this project. And that is that AGS is developing it and they're using the Azoth engine. And I'll also probably add in as a bonus negative for AGS is them deciding to publish Throne and Liberty knowing the state it was in. That also does not give a great amount of confidence for the company. But I also want to talk about the level of commitment that Amazon has to making Amazon Game Studios a success. To be fair, most independent studios that have had the huge amount of issues that AGS has had would probably be shut down by now. But AGS has a huge advantage in that their parent company is overflowing with cash reserves. And in the MMO space, that is a huge advantage as MMOs are very, very expensive and time consuming to make. AGS seems very committed to continuing New World development as they still have a lot of open jobs listed for that project and have an extensive roadmap in place as well. Now, New World will never be the MMO for me long term, and while it is not fair to call it an outright failure, I am almost certain it did not meet Amazon expectations. And that is of course because of the many issues this project had at launch. The launch is incredibly critical and AGS failed big time with the launch. I've played a lot of MMO launches and I've never seen one with as many game-breaking bugs and exploits as New World had. In fact, these charts of some MMO launches and player numbers show how bad it truly is for New World's numbers post-launch. Now I'll give AGS one small benefit of the doubt here. New World had a massive streamer presence at launch, and as soon as the big drive-by streamers all quit, their followers will also usually quit. So that is certainly part of it, but the bigger issues were the bugs, exploits, and complete lack of in-game. And that was created by not having a team in place that actually had MMO experience. It was so bad that Nerdslayer Studios' fantastic series Death of a Game actually made a video on the death of New World less than 1 year after the launch of this project. And in that video he talks about one of the reasons it failed, in his eyes, is that many of the lead developers and designers did not have MMO experience. And I'll also say regarding the employees that have been able to somewhat uncover potentially speculatively for this project, it does look like they are hiring people with actual MMO experience, as far as I can tell anyways, for this project. So that's an improvement. And yes, New World has improved a decent amount since then, but the reality is it is nearly impossible for a project to be resurrected from a launch that goes that badly. In fact, the only time I can recall it happening is with Final Fantasy XIV, but they had to shut the servers down and go back into development to achieve that. But that leads me to a place of potential optimism, and that turnarounds for studios can and do happen. Square Enix with Final Fantasy XIV is an obvious example. But Square Enix also had many prior successes, and so far, AGS in my opinion does not. But past successes or failures do not necessarily mean future projects from the company will be a success or failure either. Many people are convinced Riot's upcoming MMO will take over the genre, and to be fair, I'm highly positive on that project, even though we know nothing about it. But we have seen many companies go from shining stars to rapid decline. Blizzard is a recent example, but there have been many past examples. And as I said, the inverse can also be true. Companies with shaky track records can and do turn it around, especially with massive budgets like Amazon. One of the most classic examples of a company that went from great to not so great to great again is Apple. And I know that's not in the game development industry, but I think it's an incredible example of what can happen and how big turnarounds can be with companies. So it is absolutely critical that AGS learns and grows if this project is to succeed, but they do have the ingredients in place to do it. A massive budget and an incredibly popular IP are huge advantages to have for a new MMO. And I'll also like to add, for the most part, I think AGS has stayed away from pay to win. Now I know Lost Ark has a lot of pay to win, but they were not the developer, they were just the publisher. And I know New World has potentially added a little bit of pay to win, but it's pretty mild, and it didn't exist for a good part of the game's existence. And I think that's an underrated thing with AGS that few people talk about, that they actually do a pretty good job with monetization, at least with the games they develop in-house. So let's see, considering all these aspects, if AGS can actually capitalize on what is a huge opportunity that sits in front of them. And talking a bit about the Azoth engine, game engines often do take many years, and often can take a game or two first launching on the engine before the engine reaches a better working state. I personally would have preferred a more established game engine be used, but that is not to say that Amazon cannot improve Azoth engine and make it competitive with the many top engines on the market. So let's see what they come up with, as they will have many years of further improvements to the engine before this game launches. That's all I have for this one, guys. Be sure to check out the website linked in the description for all the sources used, and I'll be keeping a close eye on this project going forward. With that, I'll see you guys in the next video.